Hello, my name is David Erickson. Today I wanted to share with you picture frame making jig. I had quite a few pictures that were kind of odd sizes, and picture frames are quite expensive. So I found this jig in the April 2005 version of Fine Woodworking Magazine. And they had a 6-page article on everything about framing pictures. So the jig itself is just made out of a piece of plywood that I've screwed on a ruler. This is an aluminum rule, 48-inch rule. Cut off a piece of it, put it at right angles. Made me a sliding stop to measure where I wanted to cut the 45 on the picture frame. On the back are a couple of zero clay miter bars by Micro Jig. I thought I would give those a shot, and they work very well. They're plastic, but they're wedge shaped, and you can adjust them to fit your table saw. The thing about the jig is you have to make it to your table saw. Every table saw is different in terms of the width of your grooves for your miter bars and the distance from the miter bar to the blade itself. So you can't just make one of these and carry it to every table saw you want to. It's made to fit yours. So I thought the best way to show you how this thing worked was to actually make a small picture frame today. Got a couple of pieces of cherry here left over from an old project I'm going to try to make a picture frame of. First thing we need to do is cut a rabbet in the backside of each piece, and that's where the picture and its backing and mats and glass and so forth will go. So we're going to cut that over at the table saw right now. Okay, so now we've got a couple of rabbets, and they will be part of our picture frame. When we get our 45s cut on the jig, we'll have something ready to assemble. Let's get to that. So the jig rides within the slots of my table saw. We don't need to cut all the way through, only enough to cut the 45 on the wood. This first slot on the left-hand side is basically just to cut the initial 45-degree miter. From there, we'll take this miter that was cut and put it against our measurement for the length of one side and cut the second one. So let's do that for a couple of them. Now I have a 5x7 picture today that I'm going to work on. So all I got to do is set this gauge right up to the 5-inch mark. Give yourself about a 1/16 of an inch. So I'll back it up about a 1/16 off that 5 and lock it down. And that will be 2 sides of my picture frame. So let's trim off the first one. So now we have 2 pieces. We need the other 2 to go yet. That's 2 down. Repeat that for the long edges. Now it's important to note when you put these in there that this rabbet goes over the ruler, both of them. And that is how you're measuring to the rabbet, not to the length of your total piece. You don't care how wide the board is, how much overlap there is past that rabbet. What you care about is the inside where the picture is going to fit. So that makes measuring real easy on this. So I'll just cut off a piece on the end to get started, and we'll cut the other 2. Now they're going to be 7, so I'll back it up to 7 1/16, say. Here we go. So we're done cutting. We've got our 2 long pieces and the 2 short pieces. Perfect 45s, ready to glue up and make our picture frame. So that'll take a little bit. We'll get it glued up and then we can see how it goes. Before I do that, I'll show you the other side. And you can see that all the rabbets lined up nice and neat. And you'll also notice that my 5 inches is inside from rabbet to rabbet. Now, let me get it glued up and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, we've got our picture frame in the clamp here, and we'll let that glue finish up drying, give it a half hour or so, and then we'll take it out and see how well everything fits. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about the jig itself. One of the key pieces of the jig, of course, is the measurement clamp. It's real important that when you're measuring how long you measure the rabbet, which is the length of the side of your picture or whatever you're framing. But where you put this jig, the measurement stop, is at the point here. Not at the point here, but where it crosses the end of the ruler. So if I want to put it at 5 inches or 5 1/16, I want it to be where this piece crosses 5 1/16, just like that. And I clamp it down. Now I got my clamp at Harbor Freight, and this was pretty short, so I had to chisel out a hole and lower it so it would actually come in contact. Notice that the ruler itself is elevated, and that's so that you can put the rabbet in there and have it supported. Now the actual piece that's doing the elevation is nothing more than a ruler. 1/4 inch rule, thick, rather, and but a pretty wide one to get in the paint department at Lowe's, this one. And put that down and your rule on top of it and screw it down the length of it. One of the key pieces is getting that thing at 45 to your blade. And if you can use your fence to do that, you can actually use a square to get it in kind of in line there. against your fence to get this started in the right direction. In cutting the ruler itself, there's no problem cutting this ruler on your table saw or on a chop saw. It's aluminum, it's soft, it cuts real easy, and it won't damage your blade. You don't have to go all the way through. As you can see, it just stops here. And because all we really need to do is cut right in front of the ruler. We cut right to here and we're done. And this is nothing but just a piece of hardwood with a clamp screwed on top and a groove cut out to ride over that ruler. Okay, looks like we're glued up here. We're gonna take the clamp off and see if it stays together. Not bad, but that's all end grain glued together there. We know that's not very strong, so I've got a few splines here I'd like to put in the end of it. So I have a spline cutting jig, I guess you'd say. Just made out of a few pieces of plywood, set it at 90 degrees, and just uses the table saw fence as a guide. So I'm going to run these through here on the corners and see if we can't get a little bit stronger setup. All right. So now we've got our splines cut, the grooves for them. We'll just put a little bit of glue on those and stick them in there. And then we'll cut those off with a flush cutting jig. Sand them smooth later. Just like that. This will make that joint much stronger and it won't come apart. So we'll be set for a long time. This jig for cutting the splines is great for making boxes. You got the same issue. Anytime you're gluing up end grain and these 45-degree angles, really works well. All right, so we got our frame. Frame is made, and splines in there. We can cut those off in a little while. In the meantime, let's see how our picture looks in it. Yeah. So this little fella came out of the Cahaba River area. He was wandering around the banks and feeling photogenic. Let me take a snapshot of him. Eastern fence lizard there. So make yourself a picture frame jig and get some of those old photographs taken care of. Appreciate your time today.